Prime Minister left for Australia on the third and final leg of his three-nation tour after concluding his visit to Papua New Guinea, where he co-hosted the first FIPIC summit. He was conferred with top honor for championing the cause of unity of Pacific Island countries in Papua New Guinea. Not just this, Prime Minister was conferred with the Companion of the Order for Fiji for his global leadership. Only a handful of the non-Fijians have received this honor till date. Salvatore Babons, he's a sociologist. He's joining us live from Sydney. Salvatore, appreciate you taking the time out and joining us on this broadcast. In terms of the cultural ties between India and Australia and also the strategic ties between the two, how do you view the ties going forward given this crucial visit of Prime Minister Modi with the Australian Prime Minister Albanese?
Well, first of all, I should say greetings from Sydney, Australia. And there's a bit of a festive atmosphere out here in Sydney. I mean, ties between Australia and India are certainly at a high point. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think that has much to do with the Quad summit. Remember, the Quad was nominally moved to Tokyo. In practice, it was really canceled. There's not much to the Quad these days. Really, this is all about the bilateral ties between India and Australia, and more than anything else, about the Indian diaspora here in Sydney and in Melbourne and in Brisbane, where it's just not only enormous, but growing rapidly.
Talking about Indian diaspora at the moment, Salvatore, do you see the entire Indian diaspora completely unified as far as their stance is concerned on welcoming Prime Minister Modi, or is there some sort of a diverse view or opinion that is coming in from the diaspora? Are they completely in support? What is the mood on the ground looking like?
Well, they're certainly unified here, and there's certainly a party atmosphere. I'm outside the Shangri-La Hotel, where Prime Minister Modi is expected soon. There's a bigger reception inside that, unfortunately, I don't have a ticket for. But, no, I mean, obviously, there are differences of opinion, as there are in any democratic country, and people either support the BJP and the Prime Minister or oppose the BJP and the Prime Minister. That's quite natural, and as it should be. I think everyone here, at least certainly everyone I've interacted with, is very proud that Narendra Modi has such a, well, that he really stands astride the global stage in the way that he does, because they're very aware that it's because of India that he is such an important figure here in Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese would be rolling out the red carpet for any Indian Prime Minister. Now, Narendra Modi is simply in the position to take advantage of that goodwill.
As far as tomorrow's event is concerned, what are your expectations in terms of what the lineup is going to be, given the fact that we've seen a huge reception from the Indian diaspora for the Prime Minister?
Well, they say there are going to be 20,000 people in a packed stadium. I'm hoping to be among them if I can get in. There's some doubt about that. People may think I can snap my fingers and get into places, but it's absolutely not true. The reception is for the diaspora, not meant for me. I'll try to do my best to get there. But it's a full day of festivities. It's not just about the Modi visit. It's also about the community coming together. And if you look at the list of sponsors of that event, I think what might surprise you is not that there's so many Indian or Hindu or diaspora associations that are involved with the event. There are so many mainstream Australian associations that are connected to that event. Corporations, community associations, everybody in Australia is just very happy that India is here, and especially in light of the fact that America is not here. Joe Biden, of course, canceling his visit to Australia, where he was supposed to have a state visit and make an address to a joint session of Parliament. That was canceled. Who's here? Well, India is here.
You know, this is huge by the standards of Indian politics, especially for us here in India. But as far as Australia is concerned, have you seen such a rousing build-up, reception, momentum for any local politician there in Australia?
Look, Mr. Modi is he's the top get. If you consider it, other countries that have such a large diaspora, for instance, China, certainly Xi Jinping would not be welcomed by the Chinese community in anything like the public way that Mr. Modi is welcomed by the Indian diaspora community. Other countries that have nearly as big a diaspora, the only other diaspora that's anywhere near on the scale of the Chinese and Indian diasporas is, believe it or not, the British diaspora. And of course, if King Charles were to come, there'd be a lot of fuss here, but certainly not for a visiting prime minister. I think if Rishi Sunak were to come to Sydney, he'd mainly be welcomed by the Indian Australian community, not so much by the local, non-Indian Australians. I think they would give a yawn. So certainly, if you're looking to make a political impact here, Mr. Modi is the big get, and I think Anthony Albanese, Australia's prime minister, understands that full well. That's why he had that stadium visit in Gujarat. It was very much about, for him, it was very much about domestic Australian politics and the power of the Indian diaspora.
How do you view the India-Australia relationship checkmating China at this point?
Look, it's not about China from the Australian side. From the Australian side, it's all about trade with India and about immigration ties with India. From India's standpoint, of course, India has for a long time now looked to the Quad partners for support in confronting China. And that's true of Australia, but also obviously of the United States and also of Japan. But I have to say, the other Quad partners, with the changeover in leadership in those countries, have really pulled back from the confrontation in China. Here in Australia, Anthony Albanese is looking to score a trade rapprochement with China. There have been informal Chinese sanctions against Australian exports, which he's hoping to reverse. Joe Biden has his own problems with China. In fact, it was Joe Biden who downgraded the Quad from being a primarily maritime security-focused cooperation to being mostly a health and welfare-focused association. And Japan's Prime Minister Kishida inherited the Quad, but he never really was that interested in it. I would say at this point, it's really India that stands alone against China, and it's India's burden to bear.
Okay, that's interesting perspective right there. We'd like to know more about that once the meeting really happens. But as far as the event is concerned, the larger-than-life event is concerned, the Australian Prime Minister Albanese is believed to have told Prime Minister Modi that he's having trouble accommodating so many requests of people who want to join in.
Yes.
So hence that just shows us the kind of excitement levels. Are you going to be there?
I'm going to try to be there. I do have teaching responsibilities at the University of Sydney, and I'm not sure security will let me in at the time, but I'm told I have a ticket waiting for me. If I can make it, I'll certainly do my best.
Right, that's right. Also, how much of the personal chemistry and the bonhomie that is being shared by these two world leaders will be seen on the diplomatic table when they do talk shop?
I think personal chemistry is vastly overrated as a keystone of diplomacy. Of course, Anthony Albanese, is keen to solicit the support of Narendra Modi. He was even more keen to solicit support from Joe Biden. And the real disappointment for Albanese is that Joe Biden has not come. He saw that as really something that would legitimate his prime ministership, to have the President of the United States addressing a joint session of Parliament here in Australia. For him, Mr. Modi represents, first of all, an electoral get in that he wants support of the Indian Australian community, and no one is more popular than Mr. Modi. But there's also an important trade relationship. Australia would like to export more to India. There's also the human relationship. Australia would like to get more skilled workers